Hello and welcome to the NHL Best Bets. Last night we had a few picks like we always do, and here you can see the results of those. Chicago played in Nashville, they lost 3-0. Nashville played smart hockey, and their goaltender Juuse Saros earned hard fight for his shutout. He stopped over 40 shots during this game. But then in Minnesota, in Vegas, Minnesota visited there, played second game in a row, won this time as well. The numbers were 2-1, and Cam Talbot as a Minnesota goalie was their important cornerstone of this win. Very good odds, plus 145 for the Minnesota win, pushed our result for the day to the green. Tommy, what's your take out of these games?
Well, of course, very happy with the profit. Always looking for that, and that's what we try to do. So even if it's only one game correct, we made a profit. So that's enough for me. But very good picks, I'd say, even with these results. Nashville, Chicago, very close match. Nashville scored two beautiful goals against Kevin Lankin, and Chicago didn't manage to beat Juuse Saros on the other end. Great game from both goaltenders. But this time it went wrong way for us. So Nashville did what was needed to get the win. They were, of course, their finishing was top notch and a lot better than Chicago. So maybe a little bit, let's say, light game from Chicago offensively. They didn't perform well in front of the net. They should have gotten more traffic in front of Juuse Saros to cause some troubles. But this time, even if 41 shots were taken, maybe the A-grade chances were not that many. But still, I do think that Chicago is quite even team with Nashville, and with these odds, we would play this game again. And then in Vegas, it was pretty much exactly as we expected. Vegas was very good at home. Minnesota managed to then come back from one goal deficit in the third period, scoring two goals. Very close matchup, coin flip type of game, low scoring, good goaltending. Very good matchup, these two teams, but this time with these odds, again, Minnesota, an excellent pick from us, so I'm very happy with that.
How about other games? Yesterday we discussed a little bit about these big favorites. Tampa took care of business barely, 2-1 against Detroit. Same for the Colorado, 2-1, maybe a bit better team in St. Louis. But then Buffalo surprised few experts and took another victory now in shootout against the Rangers. So the 3-game parlay wasn't so good bet like we discussed yesterday.
Yeah, not a very good value for those picks. I see here plus 28 money for that Tampa Bay narrow victory against Detroit. So these are always very tricky. Of course, in that game, Tampa Bay scored 2 goals early on, looked a lot better team, and then basically stopped playing. So very risky, this sort of thing. Let's see what they do tonight, because it's another issue of those games. And then Colorado, maybe a little bit disappointing again offensively against St. Louis. They did win the game, but again, very close call. So it's always a little tricky when you go in these very, very low odds and try to pick the favorite. So let's stick to these plus 150 for Minnesota. And also the system had Dallas winning in Carolina with great odds. It was profit of 127 there. So better to look for the side value in these games with a better odds than those favorites.
There were some of these surprises last night. Ottawa showed up in Montreal and won 6-3. And then, like I said, Buffalo was the team at home this time, so they won in shootout. So sometimes these underdogs can surprise us, and I think also that surprised the machine in this case.
Yeah, I think this time it was the first time that we had Montreal, Ottawa not having the side value for this game, and now they scored 6 goals. But this is something that Montreal needs to realize, is that if they start playing these sort of very offensive hockey. They're not good enough to compete in this Northern Division. So Ottawa just struck back when they had the chance. So if Montreal will go to this all-out offense against the Torontos, Edmontons of that division, they will have hard time. So I do think that's something that Claude Julien, before he was fired, was working on to get a little bit more of defensive mentality. Of course, it hinders then their attacking and their goal scoring. But in order to survive in this really tough division, I do think that Montreal needs to play a lot more defensively than they are at the moment, and that's something that if Ottawa scores 6 goals, something has gone wrong for sure. Not to mean that Ottawa is a bad team, but they're not the best of that division offensively for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting division generally because we predicted before the season that it would be Toronto, Edmonton, Winnipeg, and Calgary, the top 4, and now it looks like the top 3 teams, Toronto, Edmonton, Winnipeg, are pulling away. But then will it be Montreal or Vancouver or Calgary, the 4th team? These kind of games that you are playing against, let's say, lower opponents needs to generate points, and Montreal hasn't done that recently.
Yeah, that's exactly the case with these only divisional games. So you do have to beat those teams lower to you, or you'll be in trouble because you know that you cannot beat every game against the better teams, especially if you're fighting for the 3rd and 4th spots of the playoff race. So we are heading there. Still a lot of ice hockey left to be played, so let's not make any rash judgments. But if Montreal is playing like they did last night, I assume they will have trouble reaching the playoffs.
Tonight, hockey continues naturally. We have Easter Sunday special here, and we have picked 2 games. Columbus plays second game in Florida against Panthers. Previous game was 5-2 last night, but it was a bit unnecessary scoring there at the end. This time we think Columbus will get Joonas Korpisalo as their goaltender, and that would remarkably increase the probability for the under. And as the odds are reasonable 50-50, we have good value there for under 5.5 goals. Then Dallas plays in Carolina, second game as well, and they surprised home team in last night, but we think it would be over this time, maybe a notch lower level goaltenders, or if they are playing back-to-back, naturally that impacts the performance. So over 5.5 goals there with good plus 104 odds.
Yeah, siding with different values here, but sort of similar basis on these both picks. So Florida in another game, second game against Columbus last night, Alex Wennberg scored a hat trick. They got back Alexander Barkov, Patrick Hörnqvist to their lineup. So good game from Florida, but the 2 last goals came within the 2 last minutes of the game. So it was very under-like game to start with. Now Chris Driedger, probably playing for Florida, had an excellent season, a breakthrough from his part. So maybe even better this season than Sergei Bobrovsky for Florida. Similar thing, Columbus, Joonas Korpisalo probably returning from injury, so he is expected to take a start here, maybe a little bit better than Elvis has been. So goaltenders a little notch up, and then if there is one team that can tighten up their defense after a loss like last night, that is Columbus. So they will go defensive into this game. They will try to hit back from turnovers. They are not going to be scoring tons of goals to win games. They are going to be trying to shut down the Florida offense, and I do think that they're capable of doing that. Probably 3-1, 3-2, this sort of score is possible, but it is a clear under. And then similar sort of basis in the other game, Carolina-Dallas last night. Jake Oettinger took, I think, 40 saves. Kept his team in the game, and then Dallas managed to take the victory on the road. Now Carolina is a team offensively has the chance, has the potential to upset any team, to score 3 to 4 goals against any of the teams in the league. Dallas on the second night, defensively, very good game last night. Maybe this time Carolina will score a couple of goals, especially the first line that was completely shut off last time around. Now they will probably have a couple, and also power plays. Carolina usually pretty good. Now haven't scored a lot in the power play, so I do think again very close game, but more like 4-4 than the last night's 2-2. So I do expect that it's a high-scoring game. Also, goaltender-wise, James Reimer probably for Carolina. Good goaltender, not top-notch in the NHL, and Dallas has a little bit of an issue because Khudobin is out. So Oettinger either back-to-back game or they will have some random guy, whoever it might be. So we'll see about that. But I do think that the goaltenders are going to be a bit worse than yesterday, and Carolina needs to bounce back offensively from the slump that they had.
Yeah, I think this tonight's round is interesting from the winner's point of view. We didn't pick any winners here, but out of the 6 games that we have listed, all except Dallas are favoring the favorite here. So whichever team is favorite, there seems to be value to bet on that, regardless if it's home or away team. And do you think this kind of tendency will continue, and we would have difficulties to find this kind of good underdogs like we have usually done?
I do think that the odds are evening up a bit in compared to our simulations. I checked some statistics that home favorites have won about 65% of the times. So this is a number that we're looking at now in many of these cases. So the home favorites, for example, in Florida against Columbus, 65% for Florida. Washington in New Jersey, 65%. Of course, Tampa Bay then 78%. So not always this case, but it's pretty much in the same line as the actual numbers have been compared to the odds. So the simulation is learning, and probably the odds makers as well. But we'll see. We still can find these values like in Dallas. In Carolina, where Dallas is visiting, that there is quite a big difference between the simulations and the odds. So Dallas is our favorite, even if with a very small margin in there.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how far basically these teams are performing, like these back-to-back games last night. There were Tampa winning, Florida winning, Dallas winning, and now they are playing again against same opponent. So we'll see if it's 2-0 or even 3-0 somewhere in this mini series.
Yeah, but it's bound to be thinking that it will be an even up series, because the team that loses the first game, of course, has a little bit of a extra motivation to play. But it doesn't always happen, and that's something that the system can probably determine a little bit better than we can. So let's trust what the computer says and just try to give our input to what it means.
That's a good plan. We'll start watching hockey very soon. Tampa hosts Detroit starting in less than 1 hour, so be ready to place your bets according our picks.
Good night of hockey again.